ADHD Entrepreneur podcast. I'm your host, Laurence Pratt. And in this episode, I'm going to chat to you about what I have been doing in my first week into my 12-month challenge of trying to make some passive income from some online businesses. And if you have listened to the previous episodes, you'll know that this first week, my main aim was not to dive straight into the side projects that I had previously started, but it was to try and actually tackle some of my life admin. If you've ever heard the quote from, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, who said, if you give me 5 hours to chop down a tree, I will spend the first 3 hours sharpening my axe. So essentially, that is what I've been doing this first week, is sharpening my axe. So what had happened for the last, I would say 12 months or so, with me being so focused on my day job before I resigned, because that was taking over my life, I'd ignored a lot of things. My life admin, looking after the house. There's been lots of house projects that I need to get sorted, such as fixing the roof, fixing some damp, basically just smartening up the place, keeping on top of keeping the house tidy. I've accumulated lots of stuff. I don't know whether you can recognize this in yourselves, but I tend to buy a lot of things that I think are going to solve my problems. And the immediate purchase of that thing seems to do the trick, but then I don't actually then go on to use it. That can be physical things and add to clutter in the house, but it can also be digital things as well. So subscriptions to tools that I think is going to change my life and solve some problems, but then don't end up using them for anything useful. It could be also sort of online courses as well. I purchase so many online courses. I do 75% of them, but then don't necessarily apply them to anything. So the same thing with downloading loads of useful books or worksheets and things. I don't necessarily organize those in my digital space. So I have a desktop computer upstairs and I have my laptop, and both of them are a complete nightmare mess. So effectively, I felt that it was really important that I spent this first week trying to declutter my house, declutter my digital space, figure out how I'm going to include important things to help me tackle my ADHD, things that are physical exercise, something that's going to get me a regular amount of dopamine into my system to help me focus and concentrate, but also improve my mental health as well. So maybe trying to find time to take my dog for a walk. I can't see where he is at the moment, but he might show his face in a little while. But also maybe try to do some meditation. I've done meditation in the past. I've really enjoyed meditation in the past, but again, do it for a month and then, the interest goes and it stays there as just a good idea. It's something you should do, but don't necessarily do. Yeah. So that was the goal for this first week, was to attempt to start with a clean slate and maybe have a little think about, try and think about how my ADHD affects me in a day-to-day work day. I said in the previous episode that I'm very new to this ADHD thing. I want to say again, I'm not an expert in ADHD. I'm about 3 months into realizing that I have ADHD. And I haven't really spent much time trying to overcome or work around some of the things that it stops me from doing. I'm happy with the things the tools that it gives me that I think are positive, but I haven't found effective workarounds yet for dealing with it. So that was something that I wanted to think about as well during this first week. and I will let you know what I've done. So starting off with, I cleared out my loft. I brought everything out that I didn't need, put only the stuff that I wanted to keep back in, brought everything out and put it in my front yard. I also tidied up my backyard. I had an old shed that was full of leftover pieces of wood that I had used to create my camper van conversion. But again, it was stuff that I could be storing useful things in my shed, but I wasn't, because it was still full of scrap wood and things like that. So the shed itself had come to the end of its life. So I've broken that down and all the things in it and taken them out to the front. I've cleaned the cupboard under the stairs, got rid of everything there that I didn't need. And now I've been on Facebook Marketplace and I've sold a lot of the kids' old toys that they don't use anymore, that are taking up lots and lots of space. So I feel that I have achieved my goal in decluttering the house, and maybe could do some more stuff in the kitchen, because I haven't really done anything in there. I think I could reorganize a lot of stuff in there so that it's easier to use and things are easier to get at. So that's still something that I would like to tackle. But I suppose from a more work related or entrepreneurial related aspect, the digital space. I work mainly from two computers. I have an office space upstairs with got my desktop computer on, and I have my laptop that allows me to work from different places, coffee shops or office spaces, or for a change of scenery, downstairs in the living room. But as I was saying before, both of them have accumulated lots and lots of crap that I don't need, stuff that I've forgotten that I had because I hadn't organized it properly. And I've spent the last 6 months struggling with performance on both machines, just because there's too much memory taken up from applications that I don't use. And like I say, loads of digital stuff that's stored on there. I have basically taken everything off my internal storage, and I've uploaded it to Google Drive. There was also the transition from my works, my old job, uh, using their email address and their Google Drive. I basically had to basically declutter, get that off my computer as well, and basically just start afresh from my own Google Drive. So I've used Google Drive for desktop, which allows me to sync everything that is on my Google Drive to my computer. But I've used the streaming service that allows me to only download specific things to work offline. In theory, so far that has allowed me to clear everything off my computer. But until I start working with a lot of those assets next week, when I start doing some real work, only then will I know how effective it is to be able to work offline on Google Drive. I've done it in the past and it has worked. But again, you have to be very careful with how you keep on top of that streaming things, because it effectively in the end, you can just have downloaded everything back onto your machine again. So that is something that I will be looking to keep an eye on in the future. I have, in terms of organizing stuff on the Google Drive, I haven't really gotten into much detail there. I have created a whole bunch of folders that relate to the different projects that I want to do. But the main focus of this week was to clear the computer's internal storage. So I've basically dumped stuff into those folders. I will want to at some point find a structure that works for me and the way that my mind works. And I have a tendency to try and categorize everything, over categorize stuff. And then I end up having folders that are 3 or 4 deep, and it just makes things unusable. So I will be in a future episode or addressing what filing system I come up with that I find helpful for me. And I'll share that with you when I figured that out. There's still some things that I still haven't done. If I have time today, I will try and look at that. But I want to be using Notion. So if you've heard of Notion app, it's a way of project managing things. You can store notes and things and links and ideas, and you can capture ideas and everything in that. And it is quite a powerful, really powerful tool, and you can create some really interesting databases in there. I'm going to be using that for my sort of day-to-day management of it, keeping track of information about projects and things like that. Previously, when I first realized I had ADHD, I felt I need to get on top of this. And so I looked for a Notion template that used the GTD methodology. GTD means getting things done. I think it's by a chap called Dave Allen. I'll have to confirm that. But that is quite a rigorous system for capturing everything. The thinking behind it is that anything that you don't capture and either deal with immediately or put in a place that you will get to it in a timely manner. If you don't capture it and deal with it in that sense, then it just stays up here and it clogs up your own internal hard drive, and it means that you end up being less effective. So I've tried to use the GTD methodology in the past before, but again, you use it for a little while and move on to something else. I would like to think that would be something that I will be able to keep on top of now. So I have purchased a GTD Notion template, which I will share a link to. Now, that the guy that created that, I think his name's Dimitri something. I'll have to put a link to it. But he uses a very interesting piece of AI. It's a very interesting app that you can bolt on to your Notion template, and you can have it on your phone. Essentially, you can use it to capture voice notes, or it syncs from your WhatsApp to your Notion template, and you can basically capture a voice note and it turns that into a text note. And if you use particular prompts, it will then send that voice note to the correct project folder within your Notion GTD template. So for me, I find that quite attractive because I have a lot of ideas when I'm out and about. And if I don't feel that I've processed them, then it stays and it whirls around in my brain and I can't get anything else done. Having a fast and effective way to sort of have an idea, catalog it, and know that you'll get to it at some point. I find that really attractive. I haven't put it into practice yet, so I will have to update you in the future as to how effective that is. Something else I haven't done yet is my calendar. Again, my Google Calendar will link up with the Notion template, so that will be useful. Once I've been through this Notion template and identified all the things that I want to do, the tasks that I need to do for my various different projects, that should then effectively start filling up my calendar with things that need to do. The one thing that I need to be aware of is, and which is probably a common thing with you guys as well, is that time blindness. I can put things in a calendar, but because I don't look at my calendar, I still won't do them. So I need to find a way of being disciplined enough to live by my calendar. That's going to be a challenge for me, but it is something that hopefully I will be able to figure a way around. Another thing that I've identified within, just speaking about the calendar, but also, I suppose, speaking more about daily routine, is, as I mentioned, I personally have let my physical health not deteriorate, but I haven't got into a routine of regular exercise. I play football once a week and do a bit of bouldering, but I feel that I will operate more effectively if I am doing some more workouts, whether that be home workouts or at a gym. This morning, I had a first session with a personal trainer, which I'm going to use for the next few weeks to basically plan out a workout regime for myself to follow. I will have to address in the future as to how regularly I have sessions with him, because I think that accountability is going to be a big thing for me. If I don't have somebody there uh, that's checking in on me, that's when I can let things drop. I will keep you posted on that as well. Um, there are a few things I think I've learnt from this week regarding my ADHD and how I think I might struggle and what I might do to overcome those. So at the beginning of the week, on the Monday, I wrote myself a big to-do list. So it was a big brain dump, and I wrote a whole list of things to do. But so that feels like I've ticked the organized box. Brilliant. But because the list was so long, obviously I wasn't going to get everything done on that list. So there was a sense of, well, it's okay not to do everything on the list because it's a big brain dump. But that meant that I then didn't have a goal for the day. I didn't actually set myself a goal for what I needed to get done that day. I didn't break those tasks down into a set of manageable tasks to do that day in order to make sure that I got through a similar amount of tasks the next day. And you could say also a goal for the week. Did I really achieve everything that I wanted to do? Not really, because there's so many things on the list. If I struggled or stopped, hit a wall with one, I'd say, it's okay, I've got something else I can do. So it was very easy for me to stop one task and do another one, thinking that I'm getting through the list. But really, I'm giving myself excuses not to do certain tasks. So the one thing that I think I've learned there is it's okay to have a brain dump of a list. That's good. But for a daily goal, there needs to be one specific thing that is the most important thing to get done. And in order to not have too much going on in your mind, maybe only have 2 or 3 additional tasks on there so that you're not overloading yourself with things that aren't getting done, because it's easy to feel like you haven't achieved something if the list is still long. So my moving forward, I'm going to limit the amount of tasks that I need to get done in that day, but make sure I've identified the main goal for the day and that is achievable. And also put those together to make sure that over the week I have achieved something that is complete. I suppose I want to use the analogy of a bridge, and I suppose the concept of procrastination and perfectionism. If your goal is to build a bridge over a piece of water or whatever it is, the 2 things that can stop you is perfectionism. This has to be the best bridge, and therefore it has to be perfect. And then obviously you start procrastinating because it's not going to be the best bridge. And then in the end, you only get as far as building 80% of the bridge before you move on to something else because you're stuck. You need to find a way, or I need to find a way, sorry, to create a minimal viable, an MVP for a bridge, minimal viable product. What's the quickest way that I can build something that works? What's the smallest amount of tasks that I can get completed that does something for me, that achieves something for my businesses or for the project to succeed? Because 80% of a bridge is useless. What was the other expression? Uh, good is better than perfect. Something that is good and complete is something is better than something that is trying to be perfect but incomplete. So what I spent last night doing in order to achieve that, I found I couldn't sleep. When I went to bed, I couldn't sleep because I had things going on in my mind. I wanted to get these ideas out. And so I decided it was okay. I might as well write them down. And those are, I think SOP stands for Standards of Practice. I have to look that up and check. But it's essentially a checklist of how to complete a project or a task or a large task. It's a sequence of processes that get a job done. So it it allows you to repeat the process each time, repeat the project each time without having to necessarily think about what you need to do because it's all written out there in front of you. The, the benefit of using these SOPs or documenting these SOPs, creating your own, is that means that when it comes to you needing to delegate something or outsource something, you have written down the way that you do it or the way that it works best. And then you can pass that on to whoever needs to do it. And it's explained in such a way that they don't need to think about it. And anybody with the right skills can do it. That allows consistency to come into your projects and your business. But it also allows you not to be what's the word? You're not going to be the blockage, essentially. You can take yourself out of the business and the business will still run itself because you are able to outsource the jobs that don't necessarily need you to do them, that can be done by somebody else. So SOPs are really important. I've worked with SOP libraries that I've bought in the past, and those are really effective. And I'll be using those for a lot of the digital marketing tasks that I need to do. But at some point, there will be unique SOPs that you will want to create for your own businesses and that I want to create for mine. And so the point being was talking about the daily goal and the weekly goal. So for each of my different projects, I decided that it would be useful to look at a sequence of tasks that it grouped together, they complete fully functioning part of the project. So with the print on demand, maybe it is creating an illustration and creating the products with those, but then also creating the descriptions, publishing those to the different channels, and then creating the social media assets and the digital assets for digital advertising. So if all of those can be completed in the space of a week, then that is then an asset that can start earning you money. Now, up until now, when I've been doing these side projects in the evenings and weekends, every time I sit down and do it, I think I've got to do everything on this list. And then I get stuck in the weeds somewhere and just leave lots of things half done. So the idea behind the SOPs, and I'm calling it a 5-day SOP. So each day has one specific goal that I need to complete. And that's a sizable chunk of that I think can be achievable in that day. But then over the week, I've got enough of those chunks done to have something that is complete and ready to publish or ship or whatever the correct word is. But so effectively, it's giving me some focus for one day. It's saying you don't have to complete everything today. You just need to focus on completing that one thing. And it gives me a sense of achievement for doing that. And then over the week, I know that if I do all of those things, then that is something that is now effectively helping my business. So I went and created a whole bunch of these 5-day SOPs for the various different projects. So looking at the KDP publishing, the print on demand. And then also I had a little look at what I might need to do in terms of creating and editing and publishing the podcast episodes, whether that be on YouTube and on the podcast platforms, but also the social media side of things. So those were just sketched SOPs. Next week when I will start with one and I will start documenting those SOPs properly. And hopefully those will be something that I will be able to continue to use that helps me get stuff done. I had something of oh, I'll tell you this thing first. So about a month or so ago, again, when I just realized, when I was just starting to think about the ADHD thing and understanding that it was lack of dopamine that was causing me not be able to concentrate or focus on certain things, I remembered that I really enjoyed for a period of time using the Pomodoro technique. For anybody who's not familiar with the Pomodoro technique, it is, I think it means tomato in Italian. And my rationale for that is we might have an egg timer for cooking. Well, Italians love tomatoes in their cuisine. So I think that their version of an egg timer is a Pomodoro. It is a tomato. So tomato timers are a lot more prevalent in Italy. And the guy who invented this way of working used his own egg timer or Pomodoro timer to basically create small chunks of work time and then a really small break and then another chunk of work time. I think it's commonly like 25 minutes, but you can adapt it to your own sort of taste. But essentially, after you've done four blocks of 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Once you've done four of those, then you take a slightly longer break of 20 minutes, something like that. So that's how the Pomodoro technique works. But I thought to myself, look, I need to pay attention to my physical health and activity. I need to keep my dopamine levels up. So I'm working along the lines of doing a Pomodoro hit so that every time that I've finished a 25-minute block of work, I'll come down, I'll put the kettle on, and I'll do like a mini set of maybe 10 press ups and 10 pull ups, something like that. Something that you might have in a much longer hit workout, but you just do a little blast. So in my thinking, I'm getting the reward of getting the block of work done and tick, just done a block of work. I'm getting also the energy levels from exercise and the dopamine from that. And it's basically ticking a lot of boxes, essentially. I will let you know how effective that is. But in my mind, it just has to work. But we'll soon see whether that does work. I did have another thought as well. One of the things that I really will be paying attention to during this 12-month challenge is reflecting on what tasks am I personally best at doing? And what tasks do I struggle with? And I came up with an idea after watching the Ronnie O'Sullivan documentary on Amazon Prime. So, for those of you that don't know, Ronnie O'Sullivan is the most successful snooker player ever, but he has quite publicly struggled with his own mental health. And this documentary just follows him in his latest world championship win. But you really get to see a lot of the struggles that he has, but also how he keeps those in check. So he does a lot of running. But he also has a coach that he works with, Dr. Stephen Peters. Now, you may have heard of Dr. Stephen Peters by his very famous book called The Chimp Paradox. And the chimp paradox is his analogy of how the brain works. Dr. Stephen Peters himself says this is a very simplified way of explaining the way that the brain works. But he says that we've got like a human brain and we've got the chimp brain, which is triggered by fight, flight, and fright mode. And when our chimp takes over, it means that it can impact what our perception of ourselves is, because it stops us from doing the things that we want to do. We imagine ourselves from the human brain, and like our goals and aspirations come from what we would like to do when we're nice and comfortable in and chilled out in our human brain state. When we're triggered and we are using the monkey brain, our chimp, we can act irrationally, emotionally, and start self-sabotage. So I'm going to get to my point. It made me think about my ADHD. And I want to say this is just me thinking and me trying to process how I want to look at my ADHD. Dr. Stephen Peters says that it's important sometimes to personify your own chimp and understand so that you can recognize when it is active, if you like. And so, in the same way, I'm going to think about my ADHD as potentially being similar to the chimp in the chimp paradox. Now, I'm not saying that is scientifically correct or it's the same part of the brain or anything. I don't have any of that level of expertise at all. The reason why I'm going to do that is because I find that I'm very competitive. I find it much easier to be physically active if I play football as part of a team and against people, or if I book a game of squash with a friend, something where I have to turn up and compete with somebody. I put a lot more focus and dedication and effort into it when I'm competing with someone. I find it very difficult to be disciplined when I'm competing with myself. And I think that managing ADHD is competing with yourself. So I was trying to figure out a way in which I can compete with myself, maybe gamify working with my ADHD. And so my thinking is that as I go through my daily to-do list, which will come from my SOPs, as each individual task comes up, I'm going to assess how effectively I did it. So this is me reflecting on each task, and I'm going to say how focused I was. But so if I complete a task and stay focused, I get a point, me, the human brain. But if I get distracted and I drift off or I leave it or whatever, then the chimp wins that one. And so the game that I'm going to play with myself to compete with myself is I'm going to compete with the monkey, the chimp. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to try and have more tasks completed than he effectively interfered with. And that hopefully in time will allow me to review a week maybe or a couple of weeks and basically look at where is the chimp most active, which tasks is he getting involved with most? Is there a pattern? Is there a correlation between those? And yeah, if I then see a pattern with certain things, then I can maybe try and do something about it. Maybe that's when I'll start thinking about getting some assistance, like a virtual assistant or some outsourcing, or figuring out a better way to do it. So that is my first week. That's everything that I have thought about, done, and thought about doing. And yeah, my next two episodes will be about one will look at what I have done so far with the print on demand project. And the episode after that will be looking at what I've done so far with the Amazon KDP. And then from there, I will just be updating you on tips and tricks. I've basically just looking at how I'm managing to get through the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, and see how I get on. Thank you, Coconut. I don't know if you could hear Coconut barking there. What's up? Anyway, please subscribe if you wanna know how I get on with those two things, or if you want to know more about those print on demand and KDP. Yeah. And I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.